Hello and welcome. My name is Walter McGrory and this is Call of the Runes. And today we're going to talk about Uruz, the second rune of the first Aeat. Uruz represents the letter U phonetically, but literally it means primal ox. You can hear this in the name, Ur, being a still Germanic word for primal, and Us, in this case, meaning oxen. So quite literally, the primal oxen. In a more esoteric way, this rune represents primal power. It represents the forces of creation bubbling up from a well uncontrollably. And with that, let us begin. We'll start with the rune poems. And the first rune poem in this case is the Norwegian rune poem. Prosse comes from bad iron. The reindeer often race over the frozen snow. Prosse is a waste product for creating iron from smelting ore. Lower quality ore means more dross. Ur, in itself, the word in the Germanic languages like Dutch and German, still mean two things. They mean both primal and they mean ore. So this is a bit of a play on words. If you look at a saga, Gylfaginning 5, we see a riddle game. It's going to tie back a little bit to this theme. Riddle games were quite common in the sagas, and they were when gods or humans battled against dwarves or giants or each other, instead of with fighting, but by wits. And the wits game was usually just their knowledge of Norse mythology. In this case, the question is about creation, and I'm going to read a paragraph to you about this. Gangleri asked, how were things wrought ere the races were and the tribes of men increased? And then said Har, the streams called ice waves, those which were so long come from the frozen heads that the yeasty venom upon them had hardened like the slag that runs out of the fire. And that the slag that runs out of the fire, put a pin in that, we'll get back to that in a second. These then became ice. And when the ice halted and ceased to run, then it froze over above, and the drizzling rain that rose from the venom congealed to rime, and the rime increased, frost over frost, each over the other, even into Gunachep, the yawning void. And then spake Jafnar. Gunachep, which faced towards the northern quarter, became filled with heaviness, and masses of ice and rime, and from within drizzling rain and gusts. But the southern part of the yawning void was lighted by those sparks and glowing masses which flew out of Muspelheim. And Thridi said, just as cold arose out of Niflheim, and all terrible things, so also all that looked towards Muspelheim became hot and glowing. But Gunachep was as mild as windless air, and when the breath of heat met the rime, so that it melted and dripped, life was quickened from the yeast drops, by the power of that which sent the heat, and became a man's form. And a man is named Ymir, but the rhyme giants call him Augerlimir. The slag that I just asked you to put a pin in is also a byproduct of creating iron. It's a different byproduct. And in this poem, it is a kenning for frost, like the one that the reindeer are running across. Coming back to the whole of the creation story, but what is important for now is that I feel that this is a conscious connection where dross comes from bad iron, and the reindeer often race over the frozen snows. Both tie back to this primal Muspelheim and Niflheim, this moment of creation. I'm going to continue with the Icelandic rune poem. Shower is lamentation of the clouds, and ruin of the hay harvest, and an abomination to the shepherd. Hay season, that happens around late spring, early summer. That's after that the hay has been cut and it's laid to dry. If it rains at that time, then the hay will rot in the field, and it will mean that there's no food for the cattle, and that means the cattle will die in the winter, which is obviously the shepherd's lament, because that means that he also doesn't have any food. But rain throughout the year is also a necessity for the growth of the hay. It is also a necessity for the growth of all the other harvest produce. So, why is this poem so negative? My interpretation is that this poem hinges more towards the negative to remind us that nature is indifferent. It is a great power. The rain makes the crops grow, but the rain can also cause floodings, and the rain can also cause the grain to rot in the fields if there's too much of it. The rain is not there to help us as humans. The rain is just there, and it falls, and it has tremendous power. It's a primal force, and we need it as humans, but it can also destroy us as humans. The indifference as nature, I think, is the core of this Icelandic poem, the strength and the indifference. The last poem is the Anglo-Saxon poem, and it goes as follows. The auroch is a proud beast and has great horns. It is a very savage beast, and it fights with its horns. A great ranger of the moors, it is a creature of metal. The auroch is a type of giant cow, about 3 times the weight of an average cow today. And if you try to imagine that, then think about a bull roughly the size of a tiny elephant roaming through northern Europe. In his Gallic Wars, Julius Caesar described them as follows. They spare neither men nor wild beasts which they have espied. These the Germans take with much pains in pits and kill them. The young men harden themselves with this exercise and practice themselves in this kind of hunting, and those who have slain the greatest number of them, having produced the horn in public to serve as evidence, receive great praise. But not even when taken very young can they be rendered familiar to men and tamed. The size, shape, and appearance of their horns differ much from the horns of our oxen, and they are anxiously sought after. And they bind the tips in silver and use them as cups in their most sumptuous entertainments. So these are giant beasts. Also, Julius Caesar goes on how they are in size like an elephant, and how they have extraordinary strength and extraordinary speed, and how they are very dangerous animals. And thus single-handedly slaying such a beast was a sign of great strength. And you can imagine that the proof of slaying such a beast, the horns, were then a prized possession. There's still many archaeological finds of horns with the silver tips, as described by Julius Caesar, which were used as drinking horns. As a side note here, it's important to say that the horns were never used on helmets in battle. That is a modern media representation of Vikings sometimes, and comes from opera. And it's become very popular, but it's very impractical to have horns on your helmet in battle because a person can grab it, have a strong leverage over you. So they never had horns on their helmets in battle. But horns were important to them culturally as a show of strength, and they were used as cups. Going over to historical artifacts, there is no direct historical artifacts which use just the Uruz rune as for its magical power or to represent the word Uruz on its own. That doesn't mean that there's never been one, it's just that there's never been found one. We've only found a very small amount of runic artifacts, and we know there have been a significant amount more. Could have been that Uruz was used for amulets or for magic, and we just don't know. But at this point, it's never been found. What we do have a lot of is the symbol of the Uruz, of the auroch. If you think about cave paintings, probably one of the first images you think about is of the auroch painted on the cave walls. It was an important symbol for strength and for hunting since prehistoric times. There's cave paintings about 4,000 years before the Common Era in the caves of Lascaux, which depict hunting and these great animals. And you can see the picture here right next to me. Going over to cultural relevance then, and then we're going to head back to Gylfaginning 5, the creation of the world. It's important to say here that unlike the Abrahamic religions, the universe was not created ex nihilo, which means out of nothing. In Norse mythology, the universe was not empty. The universe contained 2 forces, at least. Niflheim, the realm of ice, and Muspelheim, the realm of fire. And between these 2 realms, the crucible, Gunnar, which translates to the yawning void. This also means that the universe was created more spontaneously, just by these two forces doing what they have to do. Niflheim has to produce cold. That's where it comes from. It radiates the cold and the ice and the Rhine, where Muspelheim radiates the heat and the fire and the light. And where these two meet in the Gunnar, that is where creation started. Not a perfect plan, not the Abrahamic watchmaker where everybody is a cog in his perfect machine. And this allows for more personal responsibility because your path is not yet set. First creature to be born from this fire and ice was Ymir. We already discussed him shortly, but the second creature was Audhumla, the primal cow. And from her udders flowed 4 rivers of milk, and with that milk she fed the first giant. For her own sustenance, she licked the ice of Niflheim on the side of Gunnar, and by doing so she freed the first of the gods. Both of these things were not her intention. She plays a very important part in creation. She is the wellspring of creation, but she did not choose to consciously create anything in a specific way. It's just her very essence is giving creation, and that creation, how that takes shape, is then a mystery. So these are not choices that she makes, but just a wellspring of creation. That brings us to our conclusion. Uruz is in itself a rune of that untamed creation. It is a great force. It is neither good nor bad. It's just unbridled strength. It's an uncontrollable force. And that also means that it depends on the other runes that surround it. If you want to use this rune in reading or in magic, that depends on what it means. For instance, if you would have Uruz next to Yera, which is the rune of the cycle of the year, it would show great returns of what you've sown. However, if you would contain it with Pertho, which is the rune of the dice cup of gambling, it might indicate a gambling problem, uncontrolled gambling, or uncontrolled growth. That is the end of the rune Uruz. If you have liked this video, please like, subscribe, and share. If you would like to know more, the book, The Call of the Runes, contains all the information that I told now, plus a lot more about the runes. It's available from Amazon. The link is down in the description. And I would hope to see you again next time. Goodbye.